High Line Canal Trail from Parker to Havana Street. Before we start, we're going to go through a little bit of admin, starting with translation needs, if anybody has any. And I will turn it over to Maite with CLC, our language consultant.
Thank you so much, Adam. Good evening, everyone. My name is Maite. I will be interpreting today's meeting. I'm part of CLC, as Adam mentioned, and we're a group of people whose mission is to generate a pragmatic attitude toward diversity. We focus our efforts in creating a safe space for everybody, as well as rally for language justice. We are committed to creating spaces that allow each individual the right to express themselves in what we call their heart language. And by doing so, we are confident that that real conversations will take place and everybody's voices and visions will be represented. So we will be using simultaneous interpretation to create this space. When I finish saying this in Spanish, we will turn on interpretation, and then you will see a globe icon in the bottom of the screen. I ask you that you select, you click on the icon, and then you will be able to select in which channel would you like to listen this event. If you choose Spanish, I suggest that you mute the main audio so you don't have to listen to both languages at the same time. I do ask you to speak at a slow pace and with clarity, so I'll make sure that I can translate everybody's voices in this meeting. So thank you again for having me here. Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Maite. Pertenezco a CLC. Somos un grupo de individuos que estamos muy comprometidos con la justicia del lenguaje. Para nosotros, la justicia del lenguaje significa que todo el mundo debería poder expresarse con el idioma de su corazón. Y al hacer esto, creemos fervientemente que todo el mundo puede ver sus voces y pensamientos e ideas representadas y presentes en la reunión. Así que hoy nosotros vamos a estar interpretando. En cuanto yo termine de explicar esto en español, van a ver, se va a presentar un icono de un globo terráqueo en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Si quieren escuchar esta reunión en español, les pido que por favor cliquen y eligen el canal de español. Además, les sugiero que silencien el audio principal para que no tengan que estar escuchando los dos idiomas a la vez. Si se están conectando desde un teléfono, tendrán en su pantalla los 3 puntos en la parte superior. Si cliquean ahí, tienen la opción de la interpretación también. Ahí de nuevo pueden elegir el canal de español y silenciar el canal del audio principal. Si van a intervenir, les pido por favor que lo hagan a una velocidad como conversación para que yo pueda asegurarme que represento y traduzco perfectamente lo que ustedes quieren decir. Muchísimas gracias por tenerme aquí y espero que disfruten. I'm ready when you are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesus, you're gonna give the translation. So one thing real quick as we get started, if everybody can make sure that they're muted again, your choice to turn the camera on or off. During the presentation, you can use the chat function as we go along to ask questions as they come up, and we will read and answer those at the end so that everybody can benefit from hearing your question. And then at the end, if you have additional questions, we'll call on you. You can raise your hand or just simply unmute yourself. So before we get started, I will turn it over to Councilwoman Sawyer to give some introductory remarks.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Adam. Welcome, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, Amanda Sawyer, Denver City Council member for District 5. I also want to recognize Council member Diana Romero Campbell, who's here from District 4 as well. This is a really exciting presentation tonight. I know that the residents of Windsor absolutely love the High Line Canal and using the High Line Canal regularly. It is an incredible asset for our community. I have mentioned several times in a number of different meetings in the area that we have some exciting upgrades coming to the High Line Canal. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And so I just want to thank Parks and Rec for being here. I want to thank the High Line Canal Conservancy for their partnership in this. And really looking forward to having you all learn about what is coming and the work that is going to be arriving in 2025 to upgrade the High Line Canal. So with that, great to see everyone. Happy holidays. And I'm going to kick it back over to Parks and Rec to get us started. Thanks, guys.
Great. Thank you, Councilwoman Sawyer. All right. So we're going to have an agenda here, talk about the project team, give a little bit of history on the High Line Canal, which you may or may not be familiar with, provide some background on the project, talk about our proposed improvements, which is really the meat and what everybody's interested in, and talk about the timeline as well, and then discuss our feedback opportunities for you all as the public and have that Q&A. So myself, Adam Lind, I'm the Trails Program Manager, and Zach Lovato is the Project Manager. So he'll be managing construction and is managing the design process. And then from our consultant team, Livable Cities is the prime and landscape architect firm, and FHU is our civil engineering firm. So just going to give some of this background on the High Line Canal that runs from Waterton Canyon all the way north towards Green Valley Ranch and DIA. Over 850 acres in total. It's about 100-foot width, and it stretches for 71 miles. So really a huge public space that connects Denver to the surrounding area and a lot of natural environments and parks and other amenities. The canal was originally done, this picture is pretty cool, in 1883, all hand dug, was acquired by Denver Water in 1924, which has recently changed, and we'll touch on that in the end. And then open to recreation in 1970 with the big trail amenity that we now see today. But the canal is outliving its historic use in the sections that do still send water for irrigation. Most of that is lost to seepage, evaporation from the infrastructure being old. The Fairmont Cemetery that's within this area was one of the last customers in the city that receives water, and they're recently just got off of that within the last year. So there's no longer, Denver Water's no longer sending water through the canal for irrigation. As many of you know, water still does collect in the canal during big storm events, but no water from irrigation is being used for customers anymore. So this is a cool picture again as well. This is Waterton Canyon, where the South Platte feeds into the canal. Originally was wood and now has been upgraded with this kind of last century's infrastructure into what we all know and love the canal today for a hiking, walking, biking trail with a lot of that connectivity to nature and wildlife and open spaces. So our partners at the High Line Canal Conservancy have been doing a lot of outreach. Many of you are probably familiar with them, and they've developed 2 plans in the last 10 years that have really helped to guide the development and the future of the canal and what everybody wants it to be, and how do we maintain and upgrade that infrastructure to support those visions that the community has. So some of the things that we'll talk about today, in addition to the trail upgrades, and these projects are going on not only within our segment, but throughout the city and along the entire trail. Looking at signage and access improvements, you may have noticed some of these wayfinding signs around the city. There's a big one at the intersection with the Cherry Creek Trail, and there's some up north in Green Valley Ranch. So those are some of the amenities that we're partnering with the Canal Conservancy on. So in terms of this project specifically, a majority of the trail in Denver is an 8-foot wide asphalt trail. We did a trail inventory assessment in 2019, and most of this trail segment was rated in poor, so the worst rating that we had. And that existing trail at 8 feet wide doesn't meet our new regional trail standards. Additionally, DPR developed an equity index in 2020 and has been updating it every 2 years. And this utilizes several factors, including park investment, income, and other socioeconomic factors to kind of rate every neighborhood in Denver. And Windsor neighborhood scores in the top tier as the highest need for additional park investments. So this map kind of represents all these neighborhoods in the equity index. The darker green colors are those neighborhoods that historically have been underinvested from our parks perspective. There's a lot of other city agencies that have similar equity indexes that use some overlapping factors, but when we're looking at park investments, that kind of swings some of these neighborhoods. So the Windsor is in our highest need for additional park investments. And that's why one of the reasons we're investing in this project in this neighborhood. So just to familiarize everybody with our limits, if you're not familiar, on the west side is the Parker and Mississippi intersection. If you're a trail user, that's where the new underpass was recently completed. And then on the east side is Havana Street, which is also the border with Aurora. So for this project, we've got $4 million for design and construction, a little bit more than a 50-50 split with the High Line Canal Conservancy, 1.7 million coming from them, which also includes funding from a GoCo grant that they recently got, if you heard that in the news, and then 2.3 million from Denver Parks and Rec, between CIP and expansion funds. So a few pictures that we just snagged. This is kind of where that new underpass at Parker was developed. So the concrete is the new trail. It's 12 feet wide, and you can see it kind of necks down into this existing asphalt trail here. So it really gives you kind of the old and the new. Again, this is a section kind of towards Fairmont Cemetery. We've got a really wide open space, but you can see the asphalt trail is cracking. It's narrow. People are already walking adjacent to the trail, kind of on this dirt surface. And then this is similar. This is around the Windsor Gardens area. You've got a drop off from the current asphalt trail down to this dirt trail that people have made over time. So we'll be enhancing all of these sections. So to talk about those proposed improvements, again, here on the left is the existing condition, and on the right is our regional trail standard. So that is a 12-foot concrete trail with an adjacent 4-foot crusher fine trail, and then recoverable shoulders so that you're not kind of just stepping off into a steep slope. So this was developed as part of Denver Moves Peds and Trails, which is a city adopted plan. So this is kind of what we're doing on our regional trails, which is the High Line, Sand Creek, Bear Creek, Cherry Creek, and South Platte. They all kind of are planned to meet this regional trail standard. However, the High Line Canal plan had a little bit of a different recommendation. And this is, looking corridor wide. So even in less developed areas or less populated areas of an 8 to 10 foot trail, hard surface with a 6 to 8 foot soft surface trail. And so with working with the Conservancy and their needs and what they've heard from the community, we've come up with a hybrid trail cross section that keeps 12 feet of concrete for ADA compliance and use, and also to give additional space for people biking to pass and not have to pass so closely, but also includes that 6-foot crusher fine trail for that natural environment that everybody enjoys. So this is our typical that we're kind of aiming for, and we'll talk about some examples where we just don't have this much space and how we made some decisions around that. So again, this picture on the left is kind of, again, the existing conditions, and on the right would be what we would do ideally. So we'd have a really wide concrete trail, that 6-foot crusher fines trail, and some shoulders. But as you can see, if we did that, we're really building right up to an existing tree, which is not ideal. So this is kind of where we had to modify that cross section, and we'll talk about how we did that. So giving some examples, we did this on a few different locations with our team, but here's just one study area around Windsor. You can see over here on the left side, you've kind of got the edge of the asphalt trail, a little bit of a shoulder, and then a pretty steep drop off. And on the right side, you've got a pretty large tree here. So knowing that a lot of these trees grew and survived while the canal was being irrigated, cottonwoods, large willows, and without the canal getting that water anymore, it's very unlikely that we'll ever get these large trees to grow back. And so we want to do what we can to preserve and not remove trees in these incidents. So I'll try and keep these examples as clear as we can and just point your attention to these colored circles are trees and tree protection zones. The red X's are trees that would be removed. So we looked at kind of what are our alternatives in this section. So if we start with that ideal 12 feet of concrete and 6 feet of pressure fines, we would be taking out 10 trees, including a 36-inch peach leaf willow and a 42-inch green ash. And so, you know, that was kind of like, we'll get the full trail section in, but we're going to significantly remove trees and modify what this section feels like. So what else can we do? So the next kind of iteration we did was, all right, well, let's narrow that concrete trail to 10 feet and keep the 6-foot crusher fines. But even by doing that, we would still be removing 9 trees. So save 1 tree, and both of those large trees have to come out. So the next iteration was, okay, let's keep the concrete trail at 12 feet because going back at some point in the future and adding 2 feet of concrete is not really a realistic solution and would be more impactful, and just reducing, and in this case, actually eliminating the crusher fines trail through this section. So by doing that, keeping the 12-foot concrete trail, it's ADA compliant, the most space for people biking to be able to use the path and get around people walking safely and not have to be so close together. We actually don't need to remove any trees in this section. So, you know, for us, that seems like the most logical option. Over time, as trees die or need to be removed, we can go back and much easier add in a crusher fine section than we could a concrete section. So this was a little bit of the decision-making process, how the sausage is made through this project. And there were a few areas where we were really trying to avoid removing any large trees and sometimes had to sacrifice a little bit of crusher fine width, a little bit of concrete trail. So it's not just one straight cross-section throughout the entire project. So how does this look if you're not?
Adam, before we proceed, just a point of clarification. For crusher fine, that's something that you mentioned several times, both of what's going to be added. What exactly is crusher fine? What type of material is it? That way people just are very much aware of what.
Yeah, sure. So it's a soft surface gravel path. So not paved, unpaved, soft surface for walking, running. Thanks, Jesus. So this is kind of what that looks like in the real world if you're a visual learner and not so much into reading engineering plans. As this gravel path exists and it approaches a large tree, it'll kind of neck down, and then we'll start back up once we have clearance out of that tree zone. So there will be a little bit of pinching, but we'll make sure that happens before that final point so that you can look back, you'll have time to stop and look over your shoulder, and really make that decision before the trail kind of gets a little bit narrower through here. So I just want to give another example as well. Really, really large tree. This is probably one of our most constrained points. You've got slopes going down both sides of the area, so we're really limited in what we can do. And you can see kind of over here, the roots of the tree are already breaking through the existing asphalt, so we really can't just pave in that same spot with the new trail. So again, kind of just a similar graphic for this example. You've got the 12-foot concrete trail and the 6-foot gravel path. Starting here, as we get closer, here's your really large tree that we're trying to preserve. That gravel path will start to taper, and additionally, we're bending out the concrete trail and shrinking it a little bit so that we're pushing away from that trunk of that large tree, giving those roots some more room to breathe. And then as we pass that tree, we'll pick up the gravel trail and start widening that back out. So this is, I think, another good visualization of how we're able to get as much of the section in as we can, but sometimes we have to make those changes to that cross section to help preserve large trees, which we think has larger value and benefit for the ecosystem and for people experiencing the trail. We really want to keep that kind of nature in the city vibe that the High Line Canal brings. Something else that's really new and cool for this project. So there's obviously a ton of existing trees along the High Line Canal, but we haven't done any new tree plantings. So that's something that we are going to do here. This is Valencia Street. So in addition, we're planning to add new irrigation to water new trees. So we know the large trees are going to slowly die over time. We want to start to bring back a new forest canopy through this area to continue to provide shade and a good experience for people using the trails. So with the tree plantings, we're also looking at kind of making this an amenity zone, an amenity corridor. So we've got some bike racks, picnic tables. We'll have a drinking fountain station. I'm from North Carolina, and I always say water fountain, and people are like, why are you going to have a big fountain shooting water out? But I mean drinking station. So something that looks like this here. We'll have some boulder seating as well, stump seating for that more natural feel, but also your typical bench seating. And that'll be interspersed for a few thousand feet west of Valencia. So we're really excited about this. This is something new for the High Line that we're doing in this area, and really trying to add these amenities that people want. We all know it's getting hotter, and with trees kind of that shade factor going down, we want to be able to provide new shade, water, amenities, rest places that people can enjoy the area, whether you're biking 20 miles or just walking a half a mile. And additionally, as we mentioned earlier on, signage will be added kind of at all these intersections to help let you know where you are on the canal. And interpretive signage is another item we're going to add at this point as well. So here's kind of, you can see at least that the current where this runs along Fairmont Cemetery is on the north side. And then we'll run this irrigation and tree planting down through the corridor. So this is something new that should be a good and welcome change for the long-term health and benefit of the canal. So additionally, all of our trail improvements will be made to meet ADA requirements. All of the crossings will have curb ramps. Since we're widening the trail, we have to widen the curb ramps. The RRFBs, that are the blinky lights where you can push the button across the street, will be put back and reset. So none of those are going to go away. So really enhancing that corridor and making sure that the trail is comfortable to use for people of all ages and abilities. So there are going to be some detours with this project. As we hire a construction contractor, we'll work through these details with them, but our initial proposal and thought is that the project will be built in phases. So this is kind of, we'll just call it phase A, from Parker and Mississippi to Valencia Street. So the segment of the trail that'll be closed will be pretty much from the underpass ramp to Valencia. It's about 0.8 miles. And so the detour route will use the existing kind of wide sidewalk path on Mississippi. And then if you're a pedestrian, you can use the sidewalk along Valencia. And if you're a bicyclist, you can use the buffered bike lanes to get through there. And all the detour routes will be signed, and the contractor will be responsible for plowing the streets, the bike lanes, if they're not gotten to by Dottie, and the sidewalks as well. So those won't necessarily fall on the property owners. Those will fall on the contractor during the construction phase because that's part of the detour. So it is a little bit longer of a route, but really our main option that we have in trying to keep people off of high-speed roads without bike lanes as much as we can, and making sure that we have sidewalks available. So the second section would be from Valencia to Dayton Street. So that closed segment is about 0.8 miles. And with looking at needing public streets and sidewalks, the best route that we have kind of comes up here to Alameda. If you're walking and using this detour, you're welcome to use the south side of the road, but the detour will be signed to the north side. The south side has some light poles that are smack in the middle of that sidewalk. So, you know, your 6 to 8 feet gets down to 3 feet going around that. And with ADA requirements, wanted to have things clear. And so the north side has a wide trail. There's no obstructions in it. And then you would cross again at this signal at Clifton and tie back down to the High Line down here. One thing we are looking at and observing is temporarily restricting parking along Clifton here, which could lead to the ability to have temporary bike lanes for people biking. If you're walking, you'll be able to use those sidewalks regardless. So we are looking at that and what that feasibility is. So this is a place, again, where the bike route and the pedestrian route are more or less the same. And then the third section is from Dayton to Havana. So this one has, the closed segment is about 0.6 miles, and due to the existing lack of sidewalks throughout the area, the bike route and the ADA pedestrian detour are separate. So if you're walking and you're comfortable, you know, walking in the street and want the shortest distance, you can kind of follow this orange line, but there's not really continuous sidewalks along Kentucky through here. So if you're biking, you can bike on the road and do that. If you're walking, you'll have to follow the detour route will be signed to go down Havana to Mississippi and back up Dayton, which we know is definitely not ideal, but without really you can kind of see how the streets are laid out without a connected grid and existing sidewalks. You don't necessarily have the space to create any kind of dedicated pedestrian route. Kentucky Drive is pretty narrow through here, so we couldn't even kind of temporarily do anything. So these are the detours that we expect to be in place as we work with the contractor. You know, they might do the work left to right, right to left, but we're gonna really make sure that we're not closing down 3 miles of trail all at the same time, and that they're completing section by section before they move on, so that the closed sections that have been in construction will be open as they move to another section. Additionally, impacts to trees. As you all are probably familiar, there are a lot of trees adjacent to the trail and in this area. So the city with the High Line Canal Conservancy recently completed a tree risk assessment in July 2022 that helps guide these decisions for tree removal prior and during the project. The contractor will be responsible for doing handwork around roots and exploratory air spading to locate roots prior to doing construction. And then specific additional care will be taken during design and during construction to protect these high value trees. And the forestry department has a pretty strict tree protection zone requirement. So that'll be implemented, and we'll be sure to be on top of that with our contractor. So as of now, this project is proposed to remove 15 trees, with 5 of those being invasive Russian olives that we're more or less required to remove because they're an invasive species. I do want to note that the High Line Canal Conservancy and Denver Water are also going to be removing about 20 plus, more than 20 trees in this kind of same area as part of this risk assessment. So these are high hazard trees that are dead or failing and are prone at any point to get blown over during a storm or have their limbs break and crash on the trail. So there'll be some additional removals that are separate from and independent from this project requirements. And those should be starting, I think, next month if they haven't started yet. So again, looking at the tree protection zone, it's 1 foot of protection for every 1 inch of tree diameter. When it hits kind of the asphalt trail, that's also kind of a line where the tree protection zone stops, since there are, you know, in theory, there's 6 inches of asphalt there, and that's kind of directing roots away. But a lot of this work is going to be in tree protection zone, so a lot of hand digging will occur for that construction, and it'll probably make the construction take a little bit longer than if we were just pouring concrete in a wide open field. So in addition to the tree planting that we talked about around Valencia, that's going to plant around 80 new trees in the current design. There'll be native seeding adjacent to the trail, so where maybe it kind of looks weedy or undeveloped, we'll be having new vegetation grown. And then also in front of the Windsor Gardens, there's a variety of existing shrubs and other vegetation that will be coming out in certain sections, and we'll be planting that back in and have been working with the groundskeeper there to develop a plan to take care of that new vegetation and help make sure it establishes. So in terms of project timeline, we started this project back in 2022. It's taken us a little bit longer than desired to get here, but we've made it and we're getting close to construction. So we're at 100% design, public outreach here. So we're taking any final comments and really making sure that we're keeping the public informed as we finalize design in the next month or two. And then we'll go through our construction procurement, and ideally construction will start in spring of 25. And like I mentioned, if we were doing this in an open field, we'd have a really good handle on how quickly construction would occur and how easy it could be. But with all the heavily treed areas and roots, there's a little bit of variability. So once we get a contractor for construction on board, we'll have a schedule and we'll be able to share that information out as well. And there'll be some additional public outreach during the construction phase as we move from section to section, so everybody's aware of what's coming, when that work's going to occur, and when those detours are going to happen. So I did want to touch base on this one other kind of not an oddball, but another item that's out there. So as you mentioned, Denver Water took over the High Line Canal in the 1920s, and in June of this year, the 45 miles of the High Line Canal was transferred ownership to Arapahoe County, including the segments in Denver. So as part of this project, if we were doing this normally, we would have to get a license agreement from Denver Water and they would review the plans. But additionally, now we have to get approval and licenses from Denver Water and Arapahoe County. So we've been in discussions with both of those agencies and have a plan forward, but it's going to take a little bit of time between now and construction to get those license agreements and all the documentation in order for this project. This is the first large project that's happening since Arapahoe County took over the ownership. So they're kind of learning what their process is and what they need to be looking for. So this will all be moving forward as we're finalizing design and procuring construction, but we can't start until that license agreement has gone through. So thanks for sitting with us for this presentation. Happy to do Q&A in a few moments. We'll post this presentation online on the project website. The roll plots for this plan will be there. You can email questions to Zach. His email is here as well. We can put that in the chat. And then we'll have the comment period open for just about 3 weeks until December 29th at midnight. So with that, I will let Jesus become the MC and throw any questions to me. And if you have other things that you didn't put in the chat, feel free to unmute yourself once we've gone through those. And thank you.
Thank you, Adam. So at this time, there are no additional questions that have come up in the chat, but I do just want to remind anyone, including the council office, that you could unmute yourself, turn on the camera if you're comfortable, in case there are any questions about what was presented.
Jesus, I did see one question in the chat regarding crusher fines and what are they and what kind of material are they? If you could just kind of clarify that, that would be great.
Yeah, and so it's really a gravel trail. It's kind of the best way to think of that, a soft surface running path. So it's not ADA compliant, so we can't just have that. If you go far down south, I think Cherry Hills, maybe their whole path is just crusher fines. And so here in Denver, we have the concrete trail for ADA compliance and bicycle use, and then the crusher fine gravel path adjacent to that a lot of runners and walkers like, that more natural surface path.
Adam, I'll add a little something to that. I think the definition crusher fines is maybe a little confusing. So they're leftover crushed materials from granite processing or other types of quarry processing. So it's really fine granite that it's almost like a powder in some forms, and it can be really flaky. You'll see it in a lot of like garden areas like Denver Botanic Gardens will have it in certain pathways. You'll see in a lot of parks areas where you don't have an official paved trail, but somewhere where people kind of meander off socially. So in order to keep things from eroding, that crusher fine holds the dirt in place, and it's pretty stable. So they're heavy and it lays down. They can erode and they can blow away over time. So it is a maintenance item. But crusher fines, meaning that they're leftovers from granite processing. Sometimes it's called breeze as well. So if you go to a home and garden store, you'll notice that people call it breeze. It's basically the same thing.
Cool. Thanks, Zach.
Thank you, Zach. There are a couple of additional questions that have come in. The first one is about phasing and construction of the phasing. Just want clarification on what the initial phase is going to be, on whether that's going to be Parker to Valencia.
Yeah, that's going to be up to the contractor once we get our construction contractor on board. We don't like to tell them exactly what they have to do. Sometimes they'll charge us more for it, so we want to let them have their experience and means and methods. But we will make sure that we're conveying that information ahead of time to make sure that you all know where construction is starting. And ideally, the contractor from the very beginning will say, we're going left to right or right to left. Here's our schedule, so we can provide kind of a general overview from the beginning of, all right, this section will be closed from March to August, this one from August to December. And then as the project moves along and we get some more detailed information, we'll continue to share that out if schedules change along that. But for now, we don't know which section will be first.
And then Adam, just kind of, go ahead, Councilwoman.
Oh, thank you. Just to follow up on that, is there a place where when that kind of information is finally available because we've brought a contractor on, et cetera, is there like a website or something that our residents can check regularly to be able to just kind of get updates on that phasing? And or is there an email address that they can sign up for kind of a updates newsletter kind of a thing? I know that we've done that in other places in the district for stuff like the Colfax construction, things like that.
Yeah, Jesus, I don't know if you want to take that. In general, the project website for this will have all that information on there. And Jesus, you could probably throw that in the chat for this group. I'm sure we'll be communicating with your office, Councilwoman Sawyer, to make sure if there's, in your monthly letter or anything that goes out, here's the updates on this project, as it's going to be pretty impactful. And then Jesus, I'll let you answer anything else about emails or other ways that we can keep people informed of what's happening.
Sorry, I was just putting in the project page that you had mentioned, Adam. So this project page is the website where, as Adam mentioned, the video will be uploaded and there's information on this project, generally including this slide deck and video will be posted on here. As the timeline continues, we will post information on this project, but there is another website that we use quite frequently for these type of detours. It's a little easier to remember, and it's just denvergov.org/trails. And this is where a lot of the trail projects go on. And we will also be posting information on there as far as when the detours are happening. Both Adam and Zach work really well with our team. And so they will be able to provide that information on this is where the phasing is. This is when we expect to close. And then that's where we have it. If there's any emergency closures, we usually do that on X, since that is a very quick way to be able to explain to people when something was closed in kind of an emergent situation. But for any detours or closures that are expected to happen, this project page and then that trails website will also be both places where people could plan ahead and get used to the new layout.
Awesome. Thank you.
Going back to questions, Audrey, I may need some clarification on this question. They're asking if there will be designated bike lane, a designated bike lane. I'm not sure if that means on the trail or
Yeah, hey,
during the construction. So
just for a little bit of background, and hey, Audrey, good to see you. A number of our residents have complained about this section of the High Line Canal due to how narrow it is. It's very, very dangerous for pedestrians to walk on it right now, given the speed of bikers. So the question of, is there going to be a separated space for bikes and walkers, is resulting from the experience of our residents right now on the High Line Canal, where it's very dangerous to walk it because you're likely to get hit by a biker or a scooter.
Yeah, thanks for that question. The quick answer is no. We don't really have enough space to get full on separate bike and walking paths. Unless if you're comfortable walking on that Crusher Fine side path, then there's almost never going to be a bike there. So you can walk there. If you want to walk on the concrete path, we don't really have even with 12 feet is not necessarily enough space for two-way bike traffic and two-way pedestrian traffic. So we've been working with the High Line Canal Conservancy. If you've walked in this area recently, we've implemented kind of a slow zone. So there's some additional signage, temporary, and also we'll be adding some permanent signage for people to slow down, pay attention more, kind of be aware of what's happening in the area. I will say the other areas along the South Platte where we've implemented this wide section and Sand Creek, while they don't necessarily have the same level of walkers, it really is going to be a totally different experience. I mean, we're more or less doubling the width of the path. So that ability to pass somebody with some space, to not have such close passing, is really going to be felt. And as the project completes and we kind of learn what's happening out there and see how people are reacting to the new design, we have options of implementing kind of rumble strips and additional signage to remind people to slow down, to remind people walking their dogs that DPR's rule is a 6-foot leash, so you can't have your dog running on a 20-foot retractable leash. So really just kind of helping everybody remember what the rules are, and if we're all following the rules, then it's safer for everybody. But yeah, we are aware of those concerns and issues, and we'll be doing some implementation during construction and then some follow-up implementation after the trail's been widened and completed.
And I will say, Adam, one of the things that our office has done to help support your work in this and to help support our residents is to reach out to Lime Scooters and see if they can geofence this area. So they've done the same thing on the Cherry Creek Trail through Cherry Creek, the Cherry Creek neighborhood, where we see the same kinds of challenges. And what they were able to do was geofence the area for their scooters to a maximum of 8 miles per hour speed limit. So obviously that doesn't work for private bikers or private, private scooter users, but for the public scooter usage in this area, we have made that request. I don't know if they will do it or not, but we have asked them to. So that will at least limit the scooter piece to 8 miles an hour in this area. We'll see.
Okay.
William, I see your hand up, so if you'd like to unmute yourself, feel free to.
Thank you very, very much. I just want to segue from the conversation that Councilwoman Sawyer has just made about speed and bikes and that. I live in the Windsor Gardens area. Well, it's too dark to see now, but our wonderful condo overlooks the High Line Canal Trail. We love it. We can't see garages, we can't see streets. But a great problem that's happened with the advent and the increase in the number of electric bikes that are noisy as heck, that are speedy, they can be very scary if you're walking the trail. And my wife and I walk it 3, 4, 5 times a week. But in the evening and at night, and when it's dark, we don't hear it so much now because our windows are closed, it's cold. But during the summer, it's been awful. So my question is, are motorized vehicles, be they gas or electric vehicles or bikes, are they allowed on the trail? I see your 10 mile an hour slow down. That's really good, but it doesn't work all the time too. But my first question is about motorized bikes. Are they really allowed? I know that they have the option of either, just pedaling at times and not using their motors, but we see them with the motors as they walk or zoom, or as we're walking, they zoom by us and they've got their motors on. And these are some pretty big bikes with big tires.
Yeah, so there definitely is a line. E-bikes are allowed, so electric bicycles that are battery powered. In Denver, as far as I know, we had a recent discussion about this. There is no distinction between class 1, 2, or 3 allowed on the trails. They are all allowed. The speed limit for any Denver trail is 15 miles an hour. So whether you're pedaling on a regular bike, human powered, going 30 miles an hour, or if you're on an e-bike going 30 miles an hour, it's the same violation of the rule. If it's somebody on like a moped or a scooter like that, that is illegal, regardless of what speed they are. We are seeing this all over the city. I think DPD is dealing with it. I know our rangers are dealing with it regularly. And the rangers do also do speed enforcement on occasion. So this is definitely something we can have them look into more in this area. I mean, they're not going to be out there every day, like ticketing everybody. They've got a lot of issues that they're managing. But knowing that it's an issue, we can definitely pass that on for the rangers to do some speed enforcement. And again, it doesn't matter if it's an e-bike or a human powered bike. If you're going 30 miles an hour, you're causing a danger to everybody. And that's kind of the behavior we're really trying to get at. We have a plan next year to start doing some targeted education and outreach on e-bikes and safety and all of that. So, education only goes so far, but we're definitely planning to do more because we're seeing this not only on the High Line, but all of our trails. People are just going as fast as they want and causing safety concerns for everybody.
That's right. Well, so as I understand your answer then, Adam, that it's okay for any time of the day or night. It can be 10 p.m. or midnight. They can zoom here and it sounds like a racetrack sometimes. That's okay by the law. And its noise, I assume, is from electric vehicles or, bikes.
Yeah, I mean, I think
they are noisy. They're ugly.
As long as they're not violating the city noise ordinance. I don't know what that decibel level is, 70, 58. Councilwoman Sawyer, you probably have a better chance of knowing than me. Then yeah, and they're allowed to use the trail if you're moving on a trail, kind of just going, even after I think 11 p.m. is kind of our curfew. That's allowed as you're in movement. If people were like hanging out on the trail after 11, then they would be in violation of like DPR curfew laws. But if they're just kind of commuting, there isn't a time limit on that.
Okay, well, that's kind of a disappointing answer, with the noise. I don't know anything about the decibels or, when we hear them go by, I have no idea what the decibel count would be, but I tell you, it's not very pleasant. Thank you very much for your response and for what you're doing.
Yep, and comment heard. Thank you. Anything else out there, Jesus?
This isn't necessarily a question, but I think more of a suggestion of when laying concrete, making sure that there's some type of security or there's likely to find bike marks. I don't know if you want to speak anything to how you avoid newly laid concrete getting any defects, either from people going and walking on it or riding their bikes on that. It wasn't necessarily a question, but I do just want to let you speak to that way.
Sure.
It's not an ongoing issue where you have to continue to lay the concrete.
So, I think the first general answer is please stay out of the construction zone. There'll be barriers and fencing up, but we know that everybody just walks and goes wherever they want when there's not an active construction site. But please stay out of the construction zones. Our contractors are responsible for protecting their construction site. So if they pour 50 feet and some buddy or little kid comes through and starts drawing pictures in the wet concrete or whatever, the contractor's responsible to fix that and re-pour it. So, they'll blanket it, they'll cover it, they'll fence it off. We don't typically run into a lot of issues of people, I don't know, I'll just say graffitiing wet concrete. It does happen, but then it's on the contractor to fix and not an additional cost for the city. So they kind of do the project in small segments, whether that's 100 feet a day or 300 feet a day. Most of the time they're out there on site protecting their work. So not a major concern, but definitely something that we have covered in our specs and standards during construction.
And then David, I do just want to respect your question. I don't know if any of us here could necessarily respond, as I don't know if any of us are experts about the noise that e-bikes makes or motorized bikes, especially not being clear what might be being used on the trail at this time. As Adam had mentioned, all of our trails, including trails that I live near, probably and that I use, people are using more than just either electric scooters or the other day I saw a dirt bike on our trails, which just to reiterate is not allowed if it was not clear from what Adam was stating. But
yeah, I mean, generally speaking, like a legitimate e-bike isn't going to cause a lot of noise. If it's really loud, then it's either something that somebody's modified themselves or it's an illegal scooter vehicle, something that's not supposed to be on the trail that's causing that noise. So again, we'll definitely relay that message onto our ranger team and let them know that there's likely some illegal activity. You've heard other complaints from residents of ATVs and things going on back here. So I think one of those spots, like, I don't know if anybody here is into this or familiar with this, but around Fairmont Cemetery, it sounds like people are getting on the trail and getting back into Fairmont and doing whatever after hours. So we do have a proposed removable bollard here and boulder seating on both sides of the trail. So there'll be less than 6 feet on each side of this. We don't normally do bollards because they can be a hazard to trail users, but in scenarios where we know people are illegally and regularly accessing the trail, we do want to keep those motorized vehicles out. So this is one area where we're making a design adjustment. With all the tree plantings, you wouldn't be able to drive back here. We've got other amenities in the zone, so we're really kind of making sure that this point will no longer be accessible for vehicles as we widen that trail and improve it. So hopefully that'll help resolve some of the issues that are ongoing today, but we'll definitely let the rangers know about possible other illegal vehicle use going on out here.
And Adam, if I can just add to that, I will say the city has been working with Fairmont Cemetery on some of those safety and security issues. And one of the things that Fairmont is going to do, and they're a private property owner, so they can do what they want, is to close off that access. Some of the residents are very upset about that because it is a really nice amenity for them to be able to go walk in and access the cemetery in that way. Unfortunately, this is one of those situations where we just can't make everybody happy, and we've got to err on the side of community safety. And so they are going to close off that access.
That's good to hear. At least from the issues that I've heard from some of those residents.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, there are some very disappointed residents, and I certainly understand why, but the community safety has to take precedence, and so that access is going to be closed, which is going to make a difference when it comes to the community safety piece, but is an inconvenience.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yep.
Yes, William, feel free just to do a time check. We're 3 till 7, so you're on mute, Will.
William, you're muted. We can't hear you.
think he was trying to find the mute button and
Okay.
unsuccessful.
All
There we
right,
go.
I'm sorry, I was pushing the wrong button. I apologize I don't want to lengthen this. I didn't understand, Ms. Sawyer, what, are you saying that there will no longer be any access to walking in the cemetery from the High Line Canal Trail?
I don't know that there will be no access. I do know that there is one particular door over by Lighthouse Villas that will be closed.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you.
So with that, again, we thank you all for joining us tonight. I will put one more link on our website for the Trail Detours website that I had mentioned earlier. But again, the project page and this website, and of course, we will work with Councilwoman Sawyer's office to continue to put this information out as we get a better idea of both the construction timeline and how this will be phased. That way people are able to get around, especially the pedestrians and the cyclists that will be using these and be most impacted. So with that, unless there are any last minute questions, we thank you all for joining. Councilwoman, one thing I will say is we thank you very much for all the support you've provided to this project. Some of you may be joining us tonight because of the postcard that the council office sent. She prioritized this project, and that was something sent from the council office to make sure that people knew about this meeting. So we thank her office for giving us that additional push and promotion. So, Councilwoman.
They're welcome. Thank you all very much.
All
Yeah.
right.
Thanks for attending, everybody. Have a good evening.